Well, hey again, church family. It's Pastor Scott here, and this is another Bible Study Wednesday video. This is just a time for us to be able to gather around God's Word together, even as we're so spread apart and separated. And we've definitely felt separated these last few weeks, and I miss you guys, and I hope you're doing really well. But I'm excited to bring God's Word to you today as well. And what God has been putting on my heart these last few days in preparation for this was something that's really unique, because I think it's cool how he's doing something with this Bible study. He's touching on two different things that have already been put before you in the last several weeks, and I'm excited about it. So one of the things that we're going to talk about today is how to study the Bible. So a few weeks ago, Kirk Fuller led an awesome Bible Study Wednesday video that really just answered the question, how do I study the Bible? So for all of you who are really concerned about how to study the Bible well, and wanted some guidance on that, Kirk did an awesome job doing that. And so today we're going to touch on is how to study the Bible, and we're going to take it to the next step, right? We're going to take it to the logical next step of where to go next with how to study the Bible really well. So that's the first thing that we're going to touch on. The second thing that we're going to touch on today actually coincides with what we talked about on Sunday morning with the message of fear not. We talked about how no matter your labels, your story, or your status, if you're the low-life shepherds who are rejects in the society around them, God welcomes you in, and he says, come, adore my son, right? So no matter who you are, fear not, all can come and adore Jesus, right? So that's kind of what we're touching on in our Bible study today, because we're going to see somebody who has all sorts of labels and a story and some statuses thrown on them because of the things that they've done. We're going to see how God responds, and it's just really cool. So we're going to learn how to study the Bible, and we're going to touch a little bit more on what we talked about on Sunday morning. So I'm excited to get into this, and it's going to be in Luke chapter 15, a chapter you probably are pretty familiar with because of one of the main stories that's there. It's the story of the prodigal son, right? We're all very familiar with it. I'm not actually going to read it. I'll just really quick recount it to you. But it's the story where this man had two sons, and the younger son says, I'm done with you, Dad. I'd rather have your money. And so the father divides the estate and gives him his portion, and he, a few days later, goes off into a country with all of his wealth and spoils it all. It says that he squandered it all on crazy living. So high life living in some regards, but really total, like, squandering it all on the most abhorrent things, right? And he finds that they aren't satisfying enough. He comes to the end of all his money, and he comes to a time where this country goes into famine, and he's hungry, and he's out in the field feeding pigs, and he can't even feed himself with the food the pigs are eating, and he's wanting it so badly. And he comes to the end of himself, and he says, wait a minute, my dad's servants eat better than this. Like, why don't I just apologize and go back to him and say, I'm sorry, I'll be a servant. At least make me a servant, right? So he goes back, and it turns out that the father has been waiting for him, and the father runs to him when he sees him. He hugs him and kisses him and brings out the best robe, puts it on him, brings out the signet ring, puts it on his finger, and brings out sandals for his feet, slaughters the fattened calf, right? And welcomes him in and celebrates him and says, my son that was once lost is now found, right? It's just an incredible picture to see the prodigal welcomed back into the family. And then you obviously have the part where the older brother himself is complaining, geez, like, why'd you let him back in? I've been with you this whole time. You didn't give me a calf to go kill and be with my friends. Like, geez, like what? And yet you're this son of yours who squandered all your wealth, you've let him back in, and you're celebrating his return. That doesn't make sense to me. And the father obviously reasons with him and says, you've been with me the whole time. Like, and all I have is yours. Like, your son, my son, your brother, who was once lost is now found. We must celebrate this, right? And that's pretty much the parable, the story, right? And a lot of us look at that story and we focus intently on the prodigal son, right? And rightly so. There's an incredible message about the prodigal son himself. But the question is that the main thrust of the parable? Is that the ultimate purpose of the parable? Is that what it's trying to ultimately communicate? And some people would say, yeah, but one of the key things for studying the Bible really well, and this is what we're going to be touching on with how to study the Bible, one key concept that you and I need to grasp and go to God's Word with is the concept that context is key. Context is incredibly helpful for us to understand a passage of Scripture. And so if we just took that parable by itself, we could take a lot of things away from it with the value of the prodigal son and how he's welcomed back into the family of God, right? Like just an incredible picture, right? But I would say that if we were to read the context that that parable is in, I would argue that that's not the main point. The prodigal son is not the main point of the prodigal son's story. There's actually a little bit more. And the context is key. The context is going to help inform us of that. So let me actually rewind a little bit and go back to a little bit before this passage or this parable and give the context. Luke chapter 15 and verse 1. So that's actually what we're going to read. We're going to read the 10 verses that are right before Jesus sharing the parable of the prodigal son. And you're going to see exactly what this parable ultimately is trying to get at. So let's take a look at verse 1. It says, as all the tax collectors and sinners were approaching to listen to Jesus. So these are the rejects, the shepherds like we talked about on Sunday. And the Pharisees and scribes, the religious elite, were complaining. This man, Jesus, welcomes sinners and eats with them. So Jesus told them this parable. What man among you who has 100 sheep and loses one of them does not leave the 99 in the open field and go after the lost one until he finds it? When he has found it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders, and coming home, he calls his friends and neighbors together, saying to them, rejoice with me, because I have found my lost sheep. I tell you, in the same way, there will be more joy in heaven over the one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who do not need repentance. Verse 8, or what woman who has 10 silver coins, if she loses one coin, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? When she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors together, saying, rejoice with me, because I have found the silver coin I lost. I tell you, in the same way, there is joy in the presence of God's angels over one sinner who repents. And then he says, a man had 2 sons. We get to the parable of the prodigal son. So context is key, right? What is the context, right? So we have this environment where these religious elite, who typically considered the tax collectors and sinners as untouchables, they're the rejects, we don't have anything to do with them. We're the clean ones. And those rejects are coming to Jesus, and Jesus is entertaining them. He's talking with them. He's having conversation, and he's teaching them. And the religious leaders are complaining. Geez, how would you how despicable it is for you, Jesus, to let them come talk to you. And so it's like, you see their response. You see the Pharisees and scribes' response. They're complaining, right? How dare Jesus do this? And then Jesus tells 3 consecutive parables that talk about the response of heaven when one sinner repents, right? The shepherd with the lost sheep goes and finds the one. What's the point of that parable? That the one shepherd or the one sheep is found? No, the point of that parable is ultimately how the shepherd called his friends together and rejoiced, right? They celebrated that the one returned. And then Jesus connects that to the reality of heaven, right? The celebration that happens in heaven when one sinner repents and turns to Jesus, right? Or what about the parable of the lost coin? Is the point that the coin had some value and they went back and they found it, right? No, the point of that parable is once that coin that was once lost is found, there's massive celebration. The woman gets her friends together, the family, and they come and they celebrate. I found my coin, right? And Jesus again connects that to the reality of God's angels, how there's celebration in heaven when one sinner repents and turns back to God. And then we get to the story of the parable of the prodigal son. The lost sheep, the lost coin, the lost son who's found. So if you were to connect the context to the parable of the prodigal son, is the point ultimately about the prodigal son? No. That doesn't mean that there's a lot that we can't take away from it, right? There's incredible truth. The point of the parable is the response of the Father. Jesus is saying, look to how the Father responds when one sinner repents and comes back to the family of God, right? Look to the Father. What does the Father do? He brings out the righteous robe and clothes him with it. He brings out the signet ring of the family and makes him his own son again, right? And then he brings out sandals for his feet to care for the feet that have been so scarred by the wandering into scandalous living, right? He kills the fattened calf. He throws this massive celebration, and there's dancing, and the dancing apparently can be heard from far away, right? There's massive celebration with this father when his son returns. So the point of the story isn't, hey, the prodigals can come. Yes, they can. But the point of this parable is ultimately look at the heart of the Father. Look at what God does when one sinner repents. It's also meant to call out the Pharisees of us, the Pharisaism of our hearts, right? Because then there's this older brother who complains, which is what the scribes and the Pharisees were doing when the sinners were coming to Jesus. Are we the older brother, right? When somebody who's got the labels that make them so outcast that, you can't be associated with them. That would be too messy. But when they return, are we going to be like the older brothers and say, come on, God, what are you doing? You're letting them in? They're too messy. That's too gross. They've been rejected by society. Why are you allowing them in? Or are we going to look to the heart of the Father, and are we going to join in on the celebrations of heaven when one sinner repents? Because that's what happened when you and I came to the foot of the cross, laid down our lives, died to ourselves, and believed upon Jesus alone. The heavens shouted and celebrated when you and I repented. So should we not join in the chorus of heaven that celebrates when one sinner repents, when one person says, I've come to the end of myself, would it not be better for me to live in the courtrooms of my Father? Will we celebrate that? So we're touching on how to study the Bible. Context is key. We're also touching, hey, here's another story where no matter your labels, your story, or your status, you can come because heaven will celebrate when you do. That's the heart of the Father. When you come back to God, you will not find a guilt trip. You will not find punishment. You will only find, by faith in Jesus alone, forgiveness. You'll find welcome. You'll find adoption. You'll find clothing in righteousness. You'll find protection. You will find everything that you've ever really wanted in life. You just probably didn't know it yet when you come back to the family of God and come live with the Father through Jesus by the Spirit. So that's what I've been learning. That's kind of something that God taught me recently, and not only in the context is key, but how all of this is connected. And I hope it's encouraged you. I hope it's actually illuminated your eyes to some of the things that God's doing in His Word. May God have done that incredible work in you. And may we be transformed by this. May God have transformed us into His heart that celebrates when one person repents and comes back to the Father. So I love you guys. Boy, I wish you a Merry Christmas. I hope to be able to see you before then in person. If not, Merry Christmas. I love you, and God bless. Have a good rest of your week.